Hello, this is Pro6 Studio, and I'm Brian Downs. If you've been watching the channel, you know that what I do here is discuss popular movies, television shows, and talk about how they are designed to sabotage your sex life. They bombard you with a constant message that sex is dirty, stupid, evil, shameful, and should be avoided. We live in a new Victorian age, and I think that's obvious if you look at almost any popular entertainment. In analyzing this phenomenon, I have identified 12 anti-sex memes that come back over and over again in movies and television. And this video is going to list them for you as a handy guide for my other videos. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow me on social media. All of that helps this project a good deal. Negative meme number 1 is called the wanting disaster. This is the most common one, and you're going to see this almost everywhere. The idea that wanting sex, pursuing sex, having sex, sometimes even just talking about sex, leads to some kind of catastrophe or is followed very closely by some kind of catastrophe. The wanting disaster comes in a couple of variants. One is in the present, when you're actually watching it unfold on screen. For example, in Deadpool, which I did a video on, Deadpool meets Vanessa, the great love of his life. We have a year-long sex montage where two very beautiful people bounce up and down on each other and seem to have a great time doing it, which is why Deadpool is R-rated and a big exception in the Marvel Universe. But then what happens is, still in the bedroom, Morena Baccarin, laid out on the bed in her panties, giving a smoky glance to Ryan Reynolds, who was wearing no pants to begin with, but then takes off his shirt as well. He looks like the picture of health, of course. You know, gleaming white teeth and high cheekbones and six-pack abs, and he collapses, boom, he's got cancer. And then all the terror and struggle and heartbreak that follows from that makes up the bulk of the film. And what does that follow? Their sex montage. That's the wanting disaster. That's in the present tense. For another example, see RoboCop from 2014, where Detective Murphy goes home to his family. He plays with his young son. He puts his son to bed. Then he and his wife retire to the marital bedroom. This is a married man, a family man, going into the marital bedroom with his own wife. They begin to embrace. They kiss with some passion. And then he hears his car alarm go off. And he goes downstairs and gets his nuts blown off and becomes RoboCop. The wanting disaster. Trying to have sex, never successfully has the sex, of course, with his own wife. But trying to have sex with your own wife in your own bedroom gets your nuts blown off. You also see the wanting disaster in the past tense, where very often you'll have a character who, in the backstory, had a sexual or romantic relationship with some other character. They have an ex, and that ex is going to be a problem. That ex is now their rival, that ex is now their enemy, that ex is now trying to kill them or tried to kill them in the backstory in spite of their sexual relationship. When Poe Dameron when Poe Dameron starts to mention, I can't remember her name, help me out, put it in the comments, the new female character in the helmet, who is his ex in The Rise of Skywalker, the audience is immediately supposed to go, uh-oh, she's his ex? Right, because you've been trained to react that way. It's implied they once had a romantic and or sexual relationship. And obviously that's a problem because of the wanting disaster. Negative meme number 2 is called Danger is Sex. Danger is often presented as sexy, and sex is often presented as dangerous. Vampires are always beautiful. Werewolves are sexy. Also, substance abuse and sex are often tied up like this, right? Characters who have rampaging substance abuse problems also are having sex. Alcohol, cocaine, sex, tied up like that. Or sex is presented as being menacing, repulsive in some way, that the monster has a beautiful face, and so on. If you saw The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, don't. There is a mermaid in it who has a beautiful female body, but is also weird and repulsive and fishy below the waistline. Danger is sex. Negative meme number 3. Your problem is sex. If a protagonist likes sex, pursues sex, wants sex, can get sex, then that is what's wrong with them. That is what they should battle against. That is their character flaw. We can go back a long way with this. Look at Hawkeye from MASH, right? Our noble, spirited, wisecracking Hawkeye, but he hooks up with a lot of nurses, which is what's wrong with him. That's his character flaw. Look at Winger from Community, who is good-looking, fit, glib, well-educated. Who wouldn't be attracted to Winger? Everybody is, and he finds it easy to find consenting adults who want to have sex with him, and that's Winger's problem. That's why Winger is stupid and dumb, and this is his flaw. And when he never has sex with Annie, in spite of the fact that they're both clearly attracted to each other, that's presented as his victory, and Annie's too. Take a look at Ash from the Evil Dead universe. A man with flaws, but one of his many flaws is he's attracted to women. He likes to have sex, and he doesn't seem to have any trouble finding it, and yet his sexual encounters tend to lead to demon possessions and bloody dismemberments one way or another. Also the wanting disaster. I don't have time to get into the whole Evil Dead thing right now. Maybe I'll do a video. Let me know if I should do a video. I'm interested in suggestions. That's what comments are for. Negative meme number 4 is called Serious People Don't Sex. Heroes don't have sex lives. Right? Luke Skywalker, no sex life. In fact, Jedi are supposed to be celibate. What are the Jedi? They're heroes. What are they required to be? Celibate. Anakin screws all that up when he tries to pursue a sex life. Literally, Anakin trying to pursue a sex life leads to the Empire and everything that goes wrong in the Star Wars universe, the destruction of Alderaan, the murder of billions, because of Anakin's sex life. Anakin tried to have sex, and a sex life, and a married life with Padme, who was a 100% willing participant in their life together. You know, they're consenting adults. But serious people don't sex. Jedi don't sex. Luke Skywalker doesn't sex. Han Solo is attracted to Princess Leia, but your problem is sex. Han Solo was a rake and a rogue, and how we can tell that is he's interested in Princess Leia. They go on and have a sexual relationship almost entirely off screen. What happens there? Well, refer to your Star Wars archives to find out. Kylo Ren happens, and the murder of millions. That's what happens. So, let's move on. Let's not move on. Number 4 is still serious people don't sex. Black Widow. Why does Black Widow have no sex life? She tries to have a sex life with Banner, but of course they don't, because serious people don't sex, and otherwise she has no lover. An incredibly attractive woman, you know, multilingual, well-educated, athletic, remarkably beautiful, etc. She could easily be in a relationship if she wanted to be. She's not. Why? Serious people don't sex. Wonder Woman, no relationship. In her original film, Wonder Woman, that is to say the first film where Gal Gadot was playing the character, she falls in love, and that ends tragically. She spends one night with her man, and then he dies heroically and tragically. And then she apparently spends the next 100 years or so not having relationships because serious people don't sex. But number 5, it's villains who sex. You see a character who is interested in sex, who likes sex, who pursues sex, and who can get sex, very often they're a villain. And very often that makes them the villain, right? That very often in film, someone will become a villain because they had sex, usually with a consenting adult. If you saw Russian Doll, which I ought to do a video on, who is that guy, the professional academic who has sex with Volkov at the party? I forget his name. Point is, the closest thing Russian Doll has to a villain is that guy. What does he do? He has sex with other consenting adults, but he's screwing up the entire time-space continuum doing it, apparently. I should do a video on Russian Doll. Stand by for that. Let me know if there's support for that. That's what the comment section is for. In short, if you see a woman on screen who is seeming to offer someone sex, you can be quite sure that she's a werewolf, a KGB agent, or trying to frame someone for the murder of her husband. Number 6, heroines can pretend to sex. Not usually heroes. Heroines are allowed to use flirtation, sexuality, you know, their enticing beauty to manipulate, to deceive, to get the vital information, to lead people into ambushes. But they're heroines, and therefore what they're doing is for the greater good, and therefore that's okay, but often also embarrassing. Look again at Black Widow, who uses her beauty and her charisma to manipulate all sorts of people. The very first scene we see Scarlett Johansson in as Black Widow in Avengers. That's what she's doing. She also in the Iron Man films. That's fine, as long as she doesn't actually have sex with anyone. It's perfectly okay for a character like Black Widow to kick, punch, shoot, blow things up, kill people in pursuit of the greater good. It's not okay for her to get a hand job. That's totally beyond, but we're going to get to that in a second. Negative meme number 7, flashbang tits. This is the idea that female displays of sexuality just stun men into imbecility. You see this all the time. And it's especially ridiculous when the men in question are supposed to be, soldiers or covert operatives, trained spies, but some woman comes in and starts batting her eyelashes at him and speaks in a low voice, and he goes, "Dah," and is then, ambushed, surprised, overcome, has his pocket picked. It's especially common this effect is especially common with nudity. If you remember The Whole Nine Yards, which is a very, very funny film, Bruce Willis and Amanda Peet, there's a scene where a police officer comes rushing toward a house because he's heard some gunfire and he knows that the house is full of criminals and so on. And he comes rushing toward the house with his weapon in his hand to investigate what's happening. And Amanda Peet, who is on the other team, appears in an upper window, bare-breasted. And the police officer just goes, okay, this is an undercover police officer who doesn't stop for 1 second to think this is a distraction, who doesn't say, it's extremely unusual for a woman to appear bare-breasted at a window talking to a stranger in the front yard directly after gunfire has been heard from the house. No, he just goes, Now, that's the expression I make when I see Amanda Peet's breast, but I'm in a different set of circumstances. The idea there is that any display of female sensuality or sexuality or nudity causes men's brains to fall directly out so that they may be ambushed. It's really kind of a version of the Wanting disaster, but I've listed it as its own meme. Let's move on to sex is a war crime. Now remember, it's perfectly acceptable for our heroes to shoot and punch and kick and kill and blow up in pursuit of the greater good. John Wick's body count is in the hundreds. They can lie, they can steal, they can break the law. Batman, for example, is facing 10,000 years of jail time for his career. But they can't have sex. That's beyond the pale. If they have sex, that makes them the villain. Heroines can flirt, they can lead with sex, they can lead men on, they can deceive, they can't actually have the sex. This is how screwed up our culture is. You can have a character like Black Widow, like Salt from the film Salt, wherein Angelina Jolie played the title character. All sorts of female action heroes who fight, kick, stomp, kill. They can't have sex though. If they have sex as part of a campaign of deception, that's wrong, that's bad. That only villains do that. A good example of this is in The Dark Knight Rises, when Bane raises an army of fanatical death commandos and then seizes control of Gotham and then holds a whole city captive and in terror. Well, that's routine supervillain stuff. But when Talia al Ghul has sex with Bruce Wayne under false pretenses in order to get close to him and have access to him, that's shocking. She took her panties off? I mean, seize the city, but leave your panties on. Also notice that at the end of that film, Bruce Wayne has spent some time with Anne Hathaway's Catwoman, and she knows he's Batman and so on. And then at the end, after Bruce Wayne has faked his own death and yet he appears in an Italian cafe, just sitting in an Italian cafe with Selena Kyle. Bruce Wayne being a world famous billionaire, but nobody notices. Also dead, but nobody notices that he's sitting in this cafe with Selena Kyle. The movie implies that he and Catwoman are a couple now, but they never say that. We don't see them kiss, embrace, we don't see them make love, we don't see them cuddling in a hotel room that overlooks the cafe in the square. No. But we certainly saw Bruce Wayne go to bed with Talia al Ghul. Negative meme number 9 is celebrating a celibate marriage. The movies and television usually present marriage as celibate. The relationship we're supposed to get behind, the marriage, is celibate. Look at Hawkeye in the MCU. Very little sexuality between him and his wife. They kiss a couple of times in several films. For the first several films Hawkeye is in, we don't even know that he's married. It's kept a secret. He hides it. And then do we see them, we do see them, by the way, together in their bedroom at one point in Age of Ultron, but they're both fully dressed, they're sitting by the window, they don't even sit on the bed together. Certainly they don't make love, they don't make any reference to their sex life. Their life is about children. Marriage is presented as being about children, and there's no sexuality. Good married people don't have sex. Another example about celebrating celibate marriage is John Wick. Of course, John Wick's wife has died after a long illness, and he is bereft. But he never talks about sex with his wife. Well, he barely talks about his wife at all. And there's almost no mention of their sex life. There might be like a brief flashback to them kissing or embracing. So just a tiny amount of eroticism there. And of course, those flashbacks are only there to show the depth of his anguish and justify his depopulation program. But as far as we can tell from those films, his relationship with his wife was all but sexless. Negative meme number 10, sexy, sexy celibates. So all these heroes, John Wick and Captain America and take your pick, who don't have sex lives, who are apparently celibate or very minimal sex lives, are also really, really attractive. Annie from Community. Very, very attractive people who could easily be in relationships. There's a lot about them that would attract partners. They're not in relationships. Protagonists are typically very good-looking people, but the story's lesson is that they do reject sex, which makes them noble, or they should learn to reject sex because of the wanting disaster. This is pretty closely linked to number 11, which is sexy killers. Villains are almost always really good-looking people. Protagonists are almost always really good-looking people. Protagonists kill and destroy a lot in pursuit of the greater good. Villains kill and destroy a lot in pursuit of their evil schemes. But really good-looking people tend to kill and destroy a lot. In this TV series Altered Carbon, the Netflix series Altered Carbon, the character of Takashi Kovacs moves from one body to the next because it's a far future setting where you can simply take the hard drive on which your personality and identity is stored and reinstall it in a new clone whenever you want. Well, the clones are expensive, but you can move that hard drive around. And he keeps getting installed into clones that are designed for combat, military models. In season 2 they make a point, this is a military model. Season 1, same thing. Except both of them are really good looking. Anthony Mackie, for example, season 2, remarkably handsome. Why is the military model also remarkably handsome? Sexy, sexy killers. Number 12, and this is very important, your friends are your family and family does not sex. Over and over again, this is portrayed, especially in series drama. Your friends are your family and family does not sex. You have an intentional family of the people closest to you. You spend a lot of time with them. Look at Friends, look at Sex and the City, look at Riverdale, look at Sunnydale, look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Your friends are your family and family does not sex. Sexual relationships often happen outside that group. They are trivial, they are fleeting, they are often punchlines, they're silly anecdotes in the end. Your friends are your family, and family does not sex. And any sexual attraction within the family is often regarded as a betrayal of the family as a whole and causes trouble, causes anguish. These relationships are usually more an excuse for difficulty and anger inside the relationships than they are for displaying any sort of joy or fulfillment or pleasure in sex. Your friends are your family, and family doesn't sex. Why aren't Captain America and Black Widow a couple? Your friends are your family and family doesn't sex. They're about the same age physically, a lot of shared experience in the Avengers together, both very good looking people, compatible sexual orientations, they seem to get along very well as co-workers, but the MCU never considers the possibility they could be a couple. After the snap in Infinity War, Hawkeye loses his family. He's a widow now. The movies tell you straight out that Hawkeye and Black Widow love one another. Why don't they become a couple after he's been a widow for a little while? They don't, right? Over and over and over again. Your friends are your family, and family does not sex. Which I think is really one of the most insidious, because to say, oh hey, you're going to meet people who are going to be very important to you, with whom you will be very close. You know, according to this trope, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. They might be your roommates. You're going to know them intimately. You're going to go to them for comfort and solace in times of trouble, and they will come to you for the same. But for Christ's sake, don't touch their genitals. These are exactly the people who you should not be having sex with. No, they are exactly the people you should be having sex with. They are exactly the best candidates for long-term committed sexual relationships. But our culture tells us again and again and again, don't do that. So those are the 12 negative memes as the list exists so far. I'm thinking of adding a few more. There's one thing that bothers me a lot where you'll see a scene of two people, two lovers in a bedroom together, apparently having just had sex, and she is covering herself with a sheet and will hold the sheet in front of her as she reaches for her cigarette or something. Why? You're alone with your lover. This is ridiculous. And it's especially ridiculous because I understand ratings and so on, you can't show bare breasts, which is a whole other conversation, but let's try to keep this video relatively short. So fine, have her wear a nightgown, a chemise, a t-shirt. People often put these things on right after they have sex, or sometimes wear them while they're having sex. We'll get the point. Just stop it with this sheet thing. Why would you be covering your breasts when you're alone with the person you just had sex with? It's absurd. Who may be, by the way, very often your husband, your longtime partner. Why are you doing that? Another thing that might be a meme that I see over and over again is that very often couples in movies do not use words for one another that indicate a sexual relationship. Very often the word, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, bang buddy, friends with benefits, whatever, they won't use those words to describe each other. They won't use those words to one another. They won't use those words to other characters. Well, I was out the other night with my girlfriend, Shelley. Other characters will not say, have you met Eric and his girlfriend, Donna? These words are avoided because they are trying to push sex off stage, keep it as subliminal as possible, as below the radar as possible. These might be their own memes. I need to think more about it. If you've got any input on that, please use the comment section. In fact, if you have any input at all, that's what the comment section is for. I appreciate your time in watching this video. If this interests you, and why shouldn't it? I mean, really, why shouldn't it? Then come back every week for more content here on this channel.